everybody to our Provo Municipal Council work session. Today is Tuesday, November 15th. It is 1:03 p.m. Meetings of the Municipal Council are being held in hybrid fashion. Members of the public can view council meetings on YouTube or Facebook, or they may attend in person in the council chamber here in Provo City Hall. I'll remind participants to mute your microphone when not speaking to minimize the potential for background noises and conversations to be picked up, recorded, and broadcast. My name is George Handley, Council Chair. I'm joined on the stand by Councilor Catrice McKay, Vice Chair, Rachel Whipple, Dave Shipley, and I believe Councilor Shannon Ellsworth will be joining us remotely, and we're excusing Bill Fillmore today, and I think Councilor Hoban is on his way. And we're joined also by Wayne Parker on the stand, our Chief Administrative Officer, Brian Jones, City Attorney, and Justin Harrison, our Executive Director. The opening prayer will be by Calvin Belknap, after which we'll proceed. Thanks so much.
Dear Heavenly Father, I think for this opportunity we have to be here at City Council today, we're grateful for the willingness to listen to our presentation and to council together with us about these station area plans. We're grateful, Heavenly Father, for our wonderful city, Provo, and this wonderful state, and for our opportunity to be here. And we ask you to please help us to have the Spirit with us today as we counsel, and that we can be guided to know what to do. And we're grateful for our presenters, and please bless them to have a Spirit with them, and that they can be calm and collected as they present. And please bless us, Heavenly Father, we can continue to work towards having a beautiful society that we have, and that we can continue to improve and say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
All right, we welcome Travis Hoban, who's joining us. Although this is a public meeting, only the presenters and those invited by the council may speak or ask questions unless otherwise invited by the chair. Please wait to be called on by the council chair. It is proposed that we approve the following minutes: October 18th, 2022 work meeting, October 18th, 2022 council meeting, and November 1st, 2022 work meeting. Are there any objections or requested changes? Seeing none, then I declare the minutes approved by unanimous consent. We'll start with item number 1, which is a presentation regarding station area plans from the BYU Provo City Lab class. And looks like Brandon Larson will kick this item off, and I assume you'll explain what the Provo City Lab class is for those who are not familiar.
Right. Thank you. Filling in for Javin Weaver today. Felt a little under the weather. So we've had the opportunity in our office to work with Provo City Lab with Dr. Jamin Rowan for the last few years, and they do really great work. Last year, you'll remember they came in and did some work on the city gateways, and did a great project, and was helpful in informing our future process for the gateways. So for the city gateways, this is, and I'll let them tell you a little more about their class. But from what I understand, it's an applied English class at BYU, and they work on real life projects, and so they were given the opportunity to, as we consulted with Dr. Rowan earlier this year about a project that would bring some value to the city and help inform the process we were going to be going through. And we talked about station area plans, and so they took that project on, and we've had a couple of staff members, particularly Javin Weaver and Hannah Sawzall, have been going and meeting with members of the class and going on site and looking at different areas of the city with them. So can I advance these slides, or do you? Okay, gotcha. All right. So just a little you mainly want to hear from them, but I'll just give you a little feedback or a little background on station area plans. Of course, this is a mandate from the state that we establish station area plans for those areas of the city that have public transit facilities, like our front runner station or UVX stops. So we have until 2025 to the end of 2025 to plan for at least 4 of these transit areas. So we've been getting some help from from Mountain Land Association of Governments. They've been helping us identify a consultant. They're still working on that to help us get these plans going, and then and so that process will begin next year. We had 7 stations that we have 7 stations we need to plan for, and we're going to work on getting 4 of it. We're going to cover those 7 stations with 4 plans. And so the students today took those 4 areas, and they're going to tell you what their plans for these 4 areas. Kind of the basics on this: when you have a UVX stop, you've got a plan for a quarter-mile radius around those areas, and then half-mile around a front runner station. And again, as I noted, we've got to get these plans adopted by the end of 2025. Here's some important information: the objectives. The reason why we're doing this, of course, is to make sure that we're planning well around these transit stops, particularly housing. The big thing is combining housing and transit. We want to increase the availability and affordability of housing around these stops, and promote sustainable conditions around these stops. When we get housing next to transit, it increases the residents. It just gives them more transportation opportunities and creates more connections for them, and gets cars off the road and helps us with air quality. So those are 4 of our objectives, 4 objectives for our station area plans. And then we'll get into this more as we get in. You'll hear from us down the road, but 5 components of a stationary plan. You can see those: vision map, implementation plan, and so forth. So I'm going to turn it over to the Provo City Lab, and they're going to talk about those 4 areas, and so we'll hear from them.
Thank you, Brandon. Good afternoon to the council. We are the Provo City Lab. My name's Addison Graham. We're very thrilled to be here with you guys today, and we really appreciate your guys' time. We've also been the benefactors of a lot of time and effort from both Hannah and Javin throughout the course of the semester, which we are very grateful for. And of course, it goes without saying that our professor, Dr. Jamin Rowan, is a great asset to BYU and also the Provo community. And I think I speak for our entire class when I say that we feel as though it's a very unique opportunity to be a part of this class and to be a part of this program working on this project. And so as Brandon started to talk about, and I'll just kind of piggyback off a little bit of what he said, we've kind of been brought on as the first phase of this project in drafting station area plans for the areas within a quarter-mile radius around the bus stops in Provo and a half-mile radius around the front runner station, as mandated by the state's bill. And so as part of this process, students from our class have researched and looked for case studies and have surveyed residents of Provo as part of our ideating process. Now, as Brandon pointed out, it is mandated by the state that these station area plans address these 4 main categories. These categories being increasing the availability and affordability of housing, promoting sustainable environmental conditions, enhancing access to opportunities, and increasing transportation choices and connections. And so today we would like to share just a few, not all, of the proposals that we have come up with over the course of the semester. And the way that the process will work is we will give 4 short presentations, one for each category, and just share 1 or 2 proposals for each category. And after our short presentation for each one, we're going to open it up for discussion and questions from the council. I'll set a timer for about 7 or 8 minutes, and then we will proceed to discuss. At the end of those 7 or 8 minutes, I'll stand up to indicate to the council that it's time to move on to the next thing. And let me just say right now that shutting down passionate and insightful discussion among you people is not going to be my favorite part of the afternoon, but I will do it. And
I'm glad somebody else is going to play that role for the next hour.
I will play that role, much to my chagrin. Yeah, so are there any questions about the bill, the project, or the format of the presentation before we jump in? All right, sounds good. We'll get started.
Thanks, Addison. My name is Laura Anderson, and I'll be discussing increasing the availability and affordability of housing. So everyone in this room understands the need for moderate and low income housing in Provo. Everyone in this room also understands that increasing affordable housing is a very contentious and controversial issue. What this House bill and the station area plans do is give us an opportunity to think very critically about where we can locate high density and affordable housing in Provo, and to plan long-term in order to balance the need for affordable housing as well as traditional single-family residential housing. So our 2 proposals rest on zoning tools. Firstly, ITOD zones are really great for instigating housing in public transit areas. They offer lots of flexibility to developers, which makes them an attractive choice and can bring in affordable and high density housing opportunities. ITOD zones have already been very successful in Provo. We've seen their success with the example of Mill Race, a high density housing complex that's being built in the Front Runner Station area, as well as the Mix, which is another high density housing complex. This one is being built North Provo towards the border with Orem. However, ITOD zones are intended to be temporary. They have interim in the name. And we believe that a transition from ITOD zones towards mixed use zoning would be beneficial for increasing the availability and affordability of housing in Provo. This proposal is specific to Station Area 1. Station Area 1 is around the UVX station close to the Walmart neighborhood grocery store, right along University Parkway and 550 West through 2230 North. As you can see, this area is currently zoned for auto commercial zones, shopping centers, and the ITOD zone where the Mix, that high density housing complex, is currently under construction. We propose that rezoning these commercial areas into mixed use would allow for a transition from this current shopping and housing area towards more mixed use opportunities, bringing in more housing developments that have already been begun with the ITOD zone, and just allowing for subdivisions or the subdivision of lots according to future redevelopment and other development opportunities. Our second proposal for rezoning is about low density residential zones. LDR zones offer more density than a traditional R1 zone, but they are still compatible with the character of a single family residential neighborhood. This makes them really great for being able to balance the character of a neighborhood while still providing affordable housing in the area. We think that LDR zones would be especially useful in Station Area 3. Station Area 3 encompasses multiple UVX stations that go along University Avenue. As you can see here, we have the station next to the Provo Library at Academy Square, as well as the UVX station near 300 North. And currently in the Joaquin neighborhood plan, the area in yellow is zoned as residential conservation zones. But we believe that this border area Close to University Avenue, moving into the Joaquin neighborhood would be a great candidate for LDR zoning. This would create a transition between high density housing or higher density housing close to transit stations while still being compatible with the Joaquin neighborhood. As mentioned by this quote, this proposal already exists in the neighborhood plan, which indicates some community support. And I've looked on the agenda and I'm aware that a proposal for rezoning from residential conservation towards LDR zoning in the Maeser neighborhood will be later on the agenda for today. And the city planners have recommended making that rezoning change, indicating that this is a tool that could be used in certain areas of Provo to increase availability and affordability of housing.
Before you go on, can I ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So you indicated that you think it would be a good idea to change it to LDR in an area to the east of University Avenue, as is.
Yes.
How far east would you anticipate going?
We have not 2 streets over. Yeah, just to 200.
Okay, that is not what the neighborhood plan says. They see a north-south division, not an east-west one.
Right. Sorry, I should have clarified. It doesn't exist as a proposal to move eastward in the plan, but the idea of having LDR zoning in this area exists in the plan. That's what I was referring to, not necessarily the east area. But yes, thank you for making that distinction.
Thank you.
And that was the end of my mini presentation. So now we can open up to questions. Thank you for that.
Any other questions? Maybe I have one about, so the yellow there is the residential conservation.
Mhm.
Is it your opinion? So what I understand about the history of that is that in order to conserve some of the homes that were in the Joaquin area and other areas downtown, we put that on there, but it's kind of frozen the residential zoning in such a way that it
Mhm.
makes it difficult for us to ever redevelop. Even, some of them are very small homes on larger lots, for example. So are
Right.
you, did I just hear you say you're proposing LDR up to 200 east,
Yes.
and then beyond that, it would still be RC?
Yes, that was our current proposal, is that we would maintain RC. I think that there's a lot of support in the community and the neighborhood for that idea of conservation. And so this is a way to kind of balance those interests as well as provide for some density.
And did you end up talking with people in the Joaquin neighborhood about this, or is it when you say people are supportive, is that just what did you guys end up doing some neighborhood outreach or in these proposals?
Yeah, so I wasn't specific to this team. Do you want to talk a little bit about the outreach you did?
Yeah, a little bit. We didn't necessarily go door to door, but we were able to talk a few different days with people along the streets. I personally went out a few times to go along the streets, and I was able to talk to a few people. And I just simply asked them if they would be if they had any issues with raising the density slightly, because they lived around that neighborhood. They lived around 300. The people I talked to, 300 east, and they seemed to didn't see that there was any problem with it. They thought that a little bit of a change in density wouldn't be a problem, but of course they're worried about the parking, and they were worried about changing the character of their neighborhood. But they thought that if it was a phased approach, then it wouldn't be that much of an issue.
Councilor Whipple?
So you said you were along 300 East.
Yes.
Where about north and south were you on that?
It was between the two stations right there. So it was probably about 400 north.
And were you talking to homeowners or renters or
They were homeowners.
homeowners?
Mhm.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Thank you for that portion, I guess.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Didn't even require me to cut you off.
Welcome, Mayor Kafusi, who's joined us.
Hi. All right, so we're going to move on now to promoting sustainable environmental conditions. And as we've looked into ways to promote sustainable environmental conditions, we've looked around at other cities around the country that have promoted certain green building incentive programs. Now, a study in 2016 found that a lot of developers are actually more incentivized by something like a expedited permitting process than they are by, a small tax break or other financial incentives. And so the city of Boise, for instance, has capitalized on something like this by giving expedited permits to developers who are willing to adhere to certain green building practices. Some of these practices include the proper disposal of materials when a building is demolished, reducing waste and pollution, conserving water. And so we see that the city of Boise and other cities around the country have adopted typically the LEED standards in order to provide incentives for developers to go green. I'm sure density of housing is talked a lot. It's talked about a lot in this chamber. And, there are certain pockets of Provo, not necessarily all pockets of Provo, that seem to be headed towards an almost inevitable densification process. I think if we look at 800 North and 700 North, just south of BYU campus, as well, and that's in Station Area 2, as well as if we look at Station Area 4, which is right near the Front Runner Station, just south of Center Street. There are certain areas that are just kind of naturally going to be developed over the course of the next few years. We think that this would be a great way for the city of Provo to encourage green and sustainable development practices without writing out big checks or giving big tax breaks. And then just a quick word on Flip Your Strip. Some of you may be aware of the statewide initiative to flip your strip for homeowners and business owners to change that park strip in between the sidewalk and the street from grass to desert landscaping. You save about 5,000 to 8,000 gallons of water per year per park strip that is flipped. And we know that this is something that's kind of in the works in the city right now. The city's actually going through a process to adhere to certain standards in order for residents of Provo to be able to qualify for the $1.25 per square foot to flip their strip that the state offers. Cities like Ogden actually match that and give, $2.50 basically for each square foot that is flipped. The other thing I want to point out, though, is that much like the green building practices, a lot of times for homeowners, it's not the financial incentives that get people to flip their strip as much as it is the fact that their neighbors have done it and that their neighbors have done it successfully. We think that in a neighborhood like the Joaquin neighborhood, for instance, where there's a lot of park strips, it could be really beneficial for the city to continue to promote this initiative and kind of capitalize on that, keeping up with the Joneses mentality of, getting people to slowly see this happening in the area and want to do it themselves. Some of you may be familiar with an article in The Guardian in September that talked about reducing water use in municipalities here in Utah. I think our fearless chairman was actually quoted in that story. And we think that continuing to be a city that tries to reduce our water consumption is extremely important. All right. I'll open it up for questions and discussion.
I've got a question about the permit incentive. And I know Javin and Hannah aren't here, and I don't know, Bill, if this is the first time you've heard about it, but I'm curious to know from the staff's point of view. We're going to have a presentation in 2 weeks from Utah Clean Energy. They're going to be talking to us about some options for, what kinds of building codes and practices we want. But the question then becomes, how do we incentivize it in a way that's actually not hurting the development that we want, but also getting the product we want. I'm curious if you have a sense, Bill, of whether this kind of a permit expediting of permits is something that would be, would that be particularly attractive or?
Yes, I think it is. I agree with Addison that if you want a certain outcome by making the city process the path of least resistance, you're going to encourage that outcome. In Salt Lake City, they've adopted ordinances that you rack up certain points for doing certain things that they want you to do. And once you hit a certain point total, you get administrative approval for that project that's expedited. So exactly what Addison is talking about. So yeah, I think there is certainly interest in that in the development community. It's something that I think we should try to do here in Provo, because anytime we can improve the development review process, that's a good thing. It also may be really helpful and play into the desire that council people have stated about getting mixing of housing types on the west side. That could be a way to help encourage that. So yeah, I think it's something we should look at.
And is it your opinion that that's more effective than any kind of financial incentive, like
That's a tough question. Because there's no place in the world where the old saying, time is money, is more true than in land development, real estate development. So that's the motivation that is being referred to. So yeah, that's a powerful motivation. Whether or not it's more compelling than financial things, I'd be hesitant to speak for the building community on that issue.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions? Okay.
Yeah, another point just to bring up really quick, and not to wrangle Bill back up here, but another thing that Boise had put in place is also assigning kind of project managers to these developers so that they didn't have to, go through the hassle of the whole permitting process. And instead it was kind of taken care of for them by city officials. I think that's another thing that, the council could consider.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments on that? Okay, sounds good. Any feedback on flip your strip?
Go ahead, Councilor Whipple.
So you said that it might be most useful in Joaquin. Can this be done for properties that are not owner occupied easily, or is it more difficult rental unit?
Yeah, I think one of the number one issues we run into in a neighborhood like the Joaquin neighborhood is that you've got homeowners who don't live in the homes, and you've got renters who are probably going to be there 2 or 3 years max. And so the question kind of becomes, well, who wants to step up and, take care of the yard? We've gone through the Joaquin neighborhood a lot of times, just kind of walking around, assessing the area. And there's a lot of, weeds growing up in the gutters. These strips are oftentimes not very attractive at all, as well as a lot of the yards. And the question becomes, okay, who's going to step in and do that? Because the gutters themselves, to my understanding, are actually the responsibility of the homeowner and not the city to maintain. And so in a place like the Joaquin neighborhood, I think that it would be attractive to homeowners, just because even though there is a little bit of a financial commitment to it on the front end, you save lots of water throughout the year, and then just the maintenance of it. I think it just becomes a lot easier once you have, as pictured here, paver stones, gravel. A lot of people also think that, the Flip Your Strip initiative wants people to just change their strips to mulch or rock. Actually, that's not advisable, and I'm not even sure if that's allowed. In fact, it's suggested that at least 50% of the ground be covered by plant or shrub, but, plants that are, better off growing in desert environments.
One issue is that these really aren't super low maintenance things. They do require ongoing maintenance and weeding and everything. And so a risk for replacing a park strip with something like what you've got pictured here is then you end up with tree of heaven and weeds and things like that growing up through the gravel. And so they end up, you need to have like hand weeding and things like that. And that's harder for a landlord to have a lawn maintenance company come and do that. Mm-hmm. So it makes it less attractive, because it's easy to just get somebody out there to mow, but to weed selectively is a trickier thing. having seen different strips turned over into gravel with plants and things like that in the neighborhood, and one in Joaquin where it's gravel and they put in fake plants once they found out that they had to have some sort of plant there. I just want to put a little bit of caution. I love doing this. We did this for our strip before it got taken out by Third South renovations. But it's not a maintenance-free thing once it's done.
Yeah. And I think, people have to put in drip systems as opposed to sprinklers, and there's definitely an effort to it. I think that's almost undeniable. I do think, as I've seen it pop up in certain areas of Joaquin neighborhood, that not just the park strip, but the yard itself has been re-landscaped. Obviously, lawns come with a certain amount of maintenance and cost as well. And I think that there is at least some, sentiment among the community members that it would be something appealing, or at least worth thinking about. Anything else?
Well, just a little bit of update. We are currently, actually, today and tomorrow and Thursday, there's a water conference happening, and several members of our city staff and the council member are attending. And the goal is to look at potential legislative aids to helping with the water conservation effort. And this is certainly one of them that we're contemplating to figure out what would be the best way to do it. So I think in principle, we're in agreement that we want to look at something like this. We just don't know exactly what the outcome will be. I had a conversation with a citizen who was very frustrated because in his neighborhood, all the strips were very, very poorly maintained, and he put mulch down on his whole thing. It was quite a big project. And then he found out that a neighbor turned him in to zoning enforcement and said that's not allowed for some of the reasons you just meant. Like, it's better than anything anybody else has going here. So there's all kinds of tricky things that we have to think through in order to get this right. But I think obviously the goal is reduced water use, period.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and while maintaining some sort of aesthetic appeal. But I do think Joaquin's tricky for the reasons you've identified. Got to figure out a way for landlords to feel incentivized to not only do it, but also to maintain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's ironic that we would rather have a patch of weeds than a line of mulch.
Yeah. But that's sometimes what policy does inadvertently, right? Is you create problems you didn't know you want.
Yeah. And, I know another one of the concern is the heat islands. If you just put a bunch of rocks there, I mean, it can definitely make the area hotter. And, I think another part of our plan that doesn't show up in this presentation, but that we also feel is very important, is maintaining trees, especially in a neighborhood like the Joaquin neighborhood that has a lot of, well-established trees to, fight against that heat island.
Do you have any sense of like a smaller strip being, I understand you don't want to pave everything, but if they're like this picture it's quite a big strip, for example, on all that paved. On the other hand, the one that's landscaped, if it's only in front of a small house, is there a net effect if you say we're going to allow pavement as one solution to the strip, as long as it's within a certain size or something?
Are you talking about pavement in terms of just putting concrete down?
Yeah.
I'd be interested. I live on 700 North, and actually right across the street from me on the south side, they have a very wide sidewalk and no strip at all. It's just been entirely paved. We haven't necessarily looked into, incentivizing homeowners toward the concrete option. Although in terms of maintenance, I would assume paver stones like this wouldn't actually be a bad idea in terms of keeping weeds down. And it'd be interesting to know how residents feel about the cement in terms of the aesthetic appeal of it.
All right. Well, any other questions? Okay, well,
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have two proposals to share today regarding enhancing access to opportunities. Our first proposal addresses access as a concept. How do people know where to go and how to get there? This proposal focuses on the front runner station, station area 4. And this is the gateway to Provo from people who are coming to town using public transit. Hundreds of workers, consumers, and visitors will come to the Provo front runner area station area every day and then move on to other locations in Provo. However, when they arrive in this area, there is no signage directing them to locations and destinations in Provo, such as BYU, downtown, the convention center, and other destinations. And if there is any signage, it is in English. And this presents a barrier to the 1 in 7 Utah residents who speak a language other than English in their home, usually their primary language, and statistically most likely Spanish. In Provo itself, we have a significant Spanish-speaking population whose needs are not always addressed by community initiatives. As a solution to this, we are proposing that we increase access for all visitors to Provo, including non-English speakers, by developing wayfinding signs that can be understood in multiple languages throughout the station area, predominantly Spanish and English. To be clear, we are not referring to on the platform signage in the front runner station. We understand that that is UTA territory and not under the jurisdiction of the city of Provo. But this area is currently experiencing very heavy redevelopment, and we see this as an opportunity to implement signage into the infrastructure of the community. And as new pathways and new destinations are created, we can direct people and informing them on what's available and how to get there. So this is the opportunity to institute wayfinding signs in the area. Our second proposal addresses the more physical aspect of access. And this proposal is specific to Station Area 1, which again is the station next to the Walmart neighborhood grocery store on University Parkway. The College Connector Trail is a pedestrian path that runs parallel to University Parkway. It intersects the Provo River Trail, and it provides access to the UVX line, the Cotton Tree Shopping Center, the Mix, new housing development and shopping center, and again, that Provo River Trail. This area has been invested in heavily by the city in terms of updating the Provo River Trail and the UVX line and making them user-friendly and accessible for pedestrians. However, in comparison, the College Connector Trail has been heavily neglected. As you can see, the functionality of the trail is very low for cyclists, skaters, strollers, anyone who's using wheels due to massive cracks in the pavement along the trail. Additionally, when we were out talking to people who were using this trail, asking them about their concerns, lighting came up as a major common concern. They referred to the lack of lighting along the path as a disincentive for using the trail, and therefore a barrier to access for all of the commercial and housing development that is going on along this trail, especially as the Mix finishes construction and 400 new housing units will open up right along this trail and residents will be moving in. We believe that investment into the maintenance of this trail is important for enhancing access to all the opportunities in the area. And now I'll open up to questions and comments.
Councilor Whipple.
You mean all of those bumps don't just make it more fun and exciting to ride your bike on it?
I wish I could say they did, but unfortunately, we've had at least 2 members in our class testify that they have fallen off of skateboards and been severely injured on this trail alone. So I don't know if they would say it was fun.
Skateboards have smaller wheels. They need to move up to fat wheels or something for that.
You can sue Dr. Rowan for that. I was laughing when you said anyone using wheels because it's pretty much what it's for. Yeah, I ride on that trail often, and I have a big e-bike with very wide tires, and I can manage, but it definitely almost throws me off my bike in some places because
Mhm.
the root problem is bumping up a lot of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a question that I suppose our staff might have to look into in terms of when, who has jurisdiction over that?
Yeah, it's right along that green line going diagonal.
Feels like it's near Low Z or something, maybe not quite there.
Go for it, Spencer.
Yeah, so both of these images are between the intersection of 2230 North and University Parkway and Freedom Boulevard. Specifically, actually, even between the bridge over Provo River and 2230 North.
Well, a
Is that
lot
in
of that,
is that in the Parks and Rec budget? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'd have to figure out when that's slated for repair work. They have sort of a schedule on that. And if we accelerate it, of course, then it's accelerating funding
Right.
in some ways that we would have to make some adjustments. So I don't know. But I know that from my personal experience, it's ready. Any other comments? Go ahead.
yeah, well, it was nice when the UVX went in because they redid that portion of the trail that's going up the hill into Orem. So it's, farther away from State Street and it's a lot safer going on that than it was before. Because I used to ride my bike up there with my kid in the trailer behind me to go grocery shopping for our family at Costco. So I spent a lot of time on this trail and the little guy would certainly get jostled all over in this stretch. But yeah, down on our portion along University Avenue, we haven't changed it and the tree roots have kept growing. So it's gotten to be more and more of an extreme sport to ride on that.
That's great. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I know that Hannah and Jabin already have it. And they've got it over there.
The slides have been published in the materials, so they're available publicly.
All right.
I think it's, I was just saying, I think it's worth bringing up briefly when you bring up the northern part of the trail that goes into Orem, that we've also briefly discussed the potential for some kind of collaboration between Provo Orem in that area. It's true that it is a lot safer than it used to be, but it's still not necessarily an attractive option. We've talked to a lot of people along this trail who said that they would walk up the trail just for exercise or ride their bikes, and they would get to that border and then turn around and go back because it just kind of looked intimidating and it was a little bit not as pleasant as it is down here with these trees. So we think that in terms of getting more people to go in between and use this trail, that is potential for more research into how that would work. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Hello, thank you. I'm Mariah, and I'll be speaking on increasing transportation choices and connections. In the bill, it was recommended that we improve the methods people are already using to get from point A to point B. Different from increasing opportunities, we're really trying to solidify the options people already have and make them a little easier to traverse. The bill specified that we can achieve this goal by investing in infrastructure, and we understand that there are already limitations on the budget, so we work to find low budget initiatives to assist people in their efforts to traverse Provo. So, we're good. Okay. This is from Station Area Plan 1. Like Addison mentioned earlier, this is just an example of other proposals we have in other plans. And just for reference, again, this is by the neighborhood Walmart marketplace, again on University Parkway. And this is a graphic shown earlier in the presentation. This is a great example of rezoning. The green marks rezoning areas. But what I would like to focus on here is the blue and yellow parts. The yellow part specifically would require an investment in infrastructure. That's calling for a formalizing of pathways that are already used. Commonly right behind the neighborhood marketplace, there's this nice little wooded section that separates the neighborhood living right behind it, the Walmart, and people commonly walk through those woods, which is great, but because it's not paved, it doesn't make it very accessible for anyone using wheels. So we've recommended a couple of formalizing footpaths there, laying down sidewalk, maybe specifying a crosswalk, which we'll show on a later slide, for commonly crossed areas of the street. And a moment on the blue sections, those are common pathways we recommend people use that might need some maintenance. They've already got a formalized path, but they lack perhaps lighting, perhaps improved sidewalks, things of that nature. And so we've already got some effective options for moving from point A to point B. We just need to reinforce them a little bit to make them easier for citizens of Provo. Now, Station Area Group 1 did a survey on the people living in these areas. Again, often residents from the neighborhood behind Walmart, if I'm citing that correctly. And these people made it clear that they are using these paths to get to necessary locations, work, school, doctor's appointments. And so this is a great investment on part of Provo to help people get to where they need to go, not to mention increasing Provo's walkability as a city. This is an example of the idealized version. As you can see here, we've got a little section where people can walk through the woods. This is connecting the Cartersville neighborhood on the left of the picture to the neighborhood, or to the Walmart grocery store on the right of the picture. Just showing where people commonly cross the street already, and then where they could have a designated concrete path through the woods. A little easier for someone with a backpack, for example, or using any other mode of transportation to use that area. Thank you. And are there any questions?
Questions? Councilor Whipple?
Yes, can you go back a couple of slides?
Yes.
More. Right. What is this Gateway Park proposal thing? Is that going to come later, or is now the time to ask?
Yeah, so this graphic is a summary of all of the proposals that our Station Area 1 team has made. Not all of those proposals are relevant to this presentation, so more to come on that later.
Can you state your name for our?
Yes, I'm Spencer Smith.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
I was actually a little unclear. So the photo of the crosswalk,
Yes.
is that, so actually stay on the image.
Oh, okay.
We were just on it. Is that little link on the left?
Mhm.
I mean, the little yellow and blue.
Oh, yeah, to the very far left with that diagonal blue line.
So
I
you're
think
saying
so.
people are already crossing there and then they're just walking into the back of Walmart? And when they get there, is there anything there, or is it just the back of the building?
Yeah, so we have a number of a full image walkthrough will come in our written portion, so you'll get to see lots of pictures later. But yeah, so that yellow blip on the left is the crosswalk that's imaged on the next slide. The blue line that it connects to is a dirt and gravel trail that pedestrians have created on their own. And that pops out right underneath like a big overhanging tree limb right into the back of the Walmart parking lot, which currently is so unused. They have fenced it off and put about a dozen storage containers there, almost blocking that entrance access point completely. But they were kind enough to leave about a 6 to 8 foot wide berth for people to get through. Previously, Walmart had signs up there prohibiting pedestrian access through that area. Apparently, it wasn't effective because the signs were taken down. And I sat in that parking lot on a Saturday afternoon at 5 p.m. and counted 20 people walking through that parking lot on foot. There was one couple who pushed their stroller and their dog up this gravel trail to vault over the guardrail at the top to cross the street to get into the Carterville neighborhood. So lots of activity going on here.
That's pretty interesting. And those are all people who otherwise have a very short walk to get their groceries.
Yes.
I don't, any questions? I feel like I'm at all the questions. Yeah, please.
Yeah, just to follow up to that. So who owns the property?
Sorry, I'll just stay close. So that portion of let's see where the blue line is. You know what? I think I am not sure. I think that was one point of research that got left behind. But
The Walmart signage though was in the
Yes.
parking lot. It wasn't
Yeah.
clear that Walmart owned that.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I don't believe Walmart owns that strip of trees. Directly north of that blue line, private property begins at some point. I'm not exactly sure where, but I'll follow up on that and make that clear in our written portion later. But obviously Carterville Road is owned by the city, and then entrance into the parking lot is Walmart's jurisdiction, but I will follow up with that. Thanks.
So I've got the Utah County parcel map pulled up on that one, and it says that the owner is common area for Provo, Utah, and it's over 7 acres there, which is a lot of acreage. But it's able to show you. Have you used that site before?
Sorry, which?
The Utah County parcel map.
Oh, yes.
So much fun.
Yeah, the parcel map. Yes. Thank you for
So the legal description is common area for the Parkway Village Shopping Center and sub area. And that's what I've got. So
Great.
maybe we could get more information from somebody in one of our happy departments.
Yes, for sure. Thank you.
Hey, well, thank you so much. Is that
Yeah. That concludes our presentation for today. So thank you to the entire council for your participation. And we haven't submitted yet our final drafts that will eventually end up in the hands of Hannah and Javin. And so we appreciate all your feedback and questions, and as we get ready to finalize those drafts and turn them in. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And thanks to all of you, because I'm sure you all played a role in putting this together. And thanks to Dr. Rowan for not only creating this opportunity for you, but for us. It's a great benefit to the city, and it's something that both the administration and the council can look at. There's some things here that might need legislative solutions, and others that could be put in charge of different departments to look into. But we'll look forward to getting the final report, and appreciate all that you guys have done. And I hope you'll remain engaged in Provo. Civically engaged, that is. Sorry, that was a really cheesy BYU joke. That just came out. All right. Thanks so much for your time. Okay, we'll move on to item number 2, an ordinance amending the general plan to adopt the Southwest Neighborhoods Plan. It says citywide application, and I assume, Brandon, you'll be presenting this as well again.
Brandon Larson, pinch hitting again. So this is this has been going on a long time, Southwest Area Plan. We're glad to get to this point, to be able to bring it here to you to discuss this. It's been through quite a process. It started, it looks like there was some effort in 2014 and then ended up there was a steering committee created in 2017 that really led to this current effort. So I just want to kind of run through a little bit about process, a little bit about what's in this plan, and then take your questions. I can get this thing to go. Maybe. There we go. So Southwest Area Plan encompasses so when I'm talking about Southwest area, I'm talking about that area that's generally from Provo River on the north down to the lake on the south, just a little past Lakeview Parkway to I-15 to the lake and the airport in that area. So everything in that area is what I'm talking about. In 2017, we had a steering committee created that included residents and I believe planning commissioners, development community, and so forth. People who were interested in this area of the city. They came together and identified. They were instrumental in helping us prepare a future land use map, and then giving some of the policies and so forth that ended up in this document. So we had we went through that process and ran into a little bit of some roadblocks in getting this entire document completed. We did get a future land use map that was adopted in 2018, and we've been utilizing that. It's been a very useful document in addressing land use questions and issues in this area of the city. And so since then, we've been working to try to get this plan, the entire plan, back to you for adoption. This thing has been it's been through quite a public process, and we've kind of got to the point after going through that public process, more on a neighborhood level and working through it on staff. We've brought it to the planning commission, and they had a lot of positive things to say about it, voted in favor of it 6-0, and we're very positive about the results of the document. And now we bring it here to you. So this document has some main, there's roughly 6 main portions of this application, or rather this general plan. And it is, if I've got too many papers up here, go back because I've just lost my place. You've got the introduction, you've got an existing characteristics section, future land use section, urban design section, and historic preservation and implementation and strategies. So I just wanted to kind of run through those parts of the plan with you, and then we can go from there. So the introduction has a lot about the background, kind of the purpose and need for this document. One of the important parts I see in this is the summary of existing goals and policies. Many of you here were involved when you can see the Southwest Area Guiding Principles and Policies, that those were amended last year. Some of them we added. We had a kind of an updated intent statement that in the past we had been going off the idea that development would be for net in this area. We went through and through this process of revising these policies or coming up with this intent statement, it was determined that we would use a 3 units per acre gross density for this southwest area generally. And so one of the things, go back here, one of the things that, clicking on the wrong thing. One of the things that we came up with here, one of the most important things I felt that was accomplished with this set of policies, this future land, this update to the future, to the update to the policy, the West Side policies, was kind of coming up with kind of getting a better idea of or setting us up for a better mix of housing. So you see the chart, you can see the charts there on the right hand side of the page. We were basically calling for a mix of housing types based on the acreage of the development. And so I think that I think that's going to be really helpful is you get zoning requests to you as a council. You'll be able to say, well, okay, here, this is an 18-acre project. Does it have do we see basically are we seeing a mix of housing types? Are we seeing, are we seeing roughly 25 to 25% small, 50% medium, and 25% large? Are we seeing a mix, or do we need to have the applicant come back? Anyway, yeah, go ahead.
So when we say mix of housing types, are we mostly just talking about a mix of lot sizes for single family homes?
Sorry, I didn't mean mix it. Thank you for correcting me. A mix of lot sizes. Thank you. Generally, and we'll get to the area plan here in a moment, which will kind of explain that a little bit better, but or give us a graphical, something graphical to look at. But we definitely are looking forward to having a better mix of lot sizes, because generally speaking, most of this area out here is going to, the designation's kind of telling us it's going to probably be some type of single family housing. So thank you for helping me clarify that. So that's this section on existing policies, I think, is one of the most important sections in the document, and a good place. It's a good housing, a place to house that West Side development policy that's been really helpful. In the future, we will have a Northwest area plan, and those West Side policies will go there as well. This section, existing characteristics, tells us, gives us a snapshot of what our residential and commercial agricultural lands look like today. Gives us a little bit about public facilities, talks a bit about our airport, and some of our parks and so forth. The current state of our transportation, and you can see one of the things that I think is helpful with this kind of document is it cites people to other related documents like the Transportation Master Plan. So again, we go through and talk a little bit about sensitive lands and demographics in our existing characteristics plan. This is really important. This next section, all of it's important, but this future land use section is one that we use quite often in our office when we have people come when we have the public come in. This is going to be a section that we're going to be referencing with them all the time, on the phone, at the counter. People want to know what they can do on their property or on a specific piece of land they're interested in. And this document or this section is very helpful for that. Here in this area, we're just kind of outlining the different types of land use designations for kind of the future development of this area.
Brandon, I have a question
Yeah,
about
go ahead.
this. So, because I know we adopted a statement, previous council about encouraging some sort of modest blending of housing types. So, and I know there was some consternation and struggle over that issue. But I'm not seeing in this any incentive to end up with development projects that would be anything but one housing type, even though the lot size might vary. We're not encouraging any kind of mixture at all, or am I misreading this?
Well, I think the majority, and maybe what I'm going to do is come here to this land use map because it helps in explaining this. Generally speaking, I think the idea is to have single family homes in those yellow residential designation areas. Lot sizes will vary. I think that the idea of having a mix of housing types, where that comes into play, as I understand it, is having the LDR. You can see the different spots. I don't know if
Yeah, I think maybe Mr. Pepperoni can help clarify this, because and again, I know there was quite a bit of wrangle over it, and I don't want to like rehash all of that, but the goal is, at least as far as I understood it, was not to go against what this lays out as the plan, but that we were, wanting to express some preference for modest mixture, so you didn't end up with huge lots of all the same kinds of houses, and then all of the high density is only in one place. And it was just a matter. It kind of, as you recall, it kind of went back and forth, but I think in the end, our settled preference was just for some modest language to encourage, and you alluded to that earlier, sort of maybe even incentivizing through expedited permits. If somebody says, I want to build, I have a lot that has 100 single family homes on it, but I actually, would be willing to build 80. And then I'd like to build, a handful of duplexes or, so that it's a modest mixture. A lot of these planned communities, that's exactly what they're going for. And that, because that creates a little more of less of a segregated housing type, in terms of the way it's laid out. I think, our preference is to put the higher densities where we've indicated, because they're going to be closer to transportation and commercial. But I'm just wondering what happened with that.
So we spent quite a bit of time debating this and working on this, and go back to the previous, that illustration at the top is where it landed. Because the RDS areas, the single family areas, the light yellow, is such a low density, we felt like the best we could do is get a variety of lot sizes in the single family areas. Now, if somebody does come in and want to do, and we can certainly move forward with trying to incentivize different product types within that RES area, there are tools we have that they can already do that. They can do a performance development. They can do a special development project. We've got tools to achieve that if that's what they want to do. And if an expedited process helps encourage that, that's great. But after going through a lot of discussion and debate and looking at different scenarios on this is where we landed. And one of the reasons why we landed here is that when your density is that low, unless you're giving a bonus density to attach units, it's very hard to make that work economically. Because a townhome pad is worth maybe $40,000, but that single family pad is worth $80,000 or $100,000. So unless you're giving a density bonus to attach units to come up with different product types, it's hard to do it economically. That's where we kind of struggled with this.
Well, I mean, it's just that it's a lot of big developers are opting for those kinds of developments. So I mean, I don't pretend to know what the financial.
They are, but they're getting the cities to approve, 5 or 6 or 8 units to the acre over that project. When you see those projects of those mixed densities, they're double the 3 units per acre we're talking about or more. And our problem with that is that we just don't have the sewer capacity to start raising those densities out on that side.
I mean, can we have any sort of, I mean, how would a developer know that that's an option if they wanted, if there's nothing?
As soon as they come in and start talking to us about West Side, we tell them that a variety of housing types has been an expressed desire by the city council. And if they do that, they're going to have an easier time getting a zone change. So
Would it help to just have a sentence in here about that?
sure.
And that's the only
Sure.
thing that worries me is that if it's just not there, that it would signal to, well, the housing type is not there. It's the
Right. The lot
size
size is only there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if it said something like, we desire when feasible and, some modest mixture of housing types that can be discussed with staff, and incentives explored or something like that. I don't know.
Okay. We can add language to that.
That would be my preference. I don't know if the rest of the council agrees with me, however, and I don't want to be like spot editing here, on the fly, but so what does the rest of the council feel about that?
So in this document, I saw it, that it encourages the gray water, that, they encourage creative proposals and things like that. But, just a few months ago, we had the proposal from a landowner who wanted to, have increased density. He's north of this area, but he's still on the west side. And even though that was a creative proposal and was addressing certain issues that need to be addressed, like the transportation connection issue, and was doing gray water, it still was advised to be rejected. So I'm not sure that having that language to encourage those things is helpful when we just rejected a
But the
project.
biggest we rejected that one was because it was double the housing density. It's exactly what I was just describing. It was a
Right.
good mix of housing types, and we acknowledge that, but it was double the housing density. And now we start getting in trouble with our infrastructure.
So
we
we
start
can
doing that.
only encourage that so long as they keep within the densities that we've already described.
Yes. Now, there's a caveat there that I'll describe to you offline because I don't want
All right.
to talk about it in a public setting, but there is a caveat in there that we've been holding in our back pocket that could be helpful in these situations, but the
So
city
if-
needs to get some real bonuses for that
Yeah.
scenario.
So if I owned a lot of property and I put a big chunk in a conservation easement, could I then do higher density on the remaining chunk because I could count my little conservation bit?
Well, we would let you transfer that density off the conservation bit. So that would increase the density on the developable area, but the overall density would still be
Average,
within the
yeah.
limits. Yeah. When we come forward to you with our Buckley Draw property, it's exactly what we've done. That's exactly what we're going to be showing you.
Just a quick typo, number 3, bicycle.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Councilor McKay?
It was also my understanding that that development hadn't even talked to you guys about the gray water system that they were thinking about. That hadn't even something that they proposed to you or even looked at logistically.
I'm not familiar with.
I believe that's right.
Councilor Shipley?
Just to weigh in on your question about whether or not we should add the language. I don't mind adding it, but I think the graphic on the page that shows townhomes,
Yeah.
I think is trying to encourage people to be more creative about what might go onto that. But it sounds like to me that it's nice to suggest it, but the reality of development project is if you have to stay within the exact same density, the per pad, the profitability of the overall project just goes down when we add mixed use and keep the same density. Am I understanding that correctly? So unless we give density credits or density bonuses based on something that they're doing on a project, we're going to decrease the profitability for a project by having them do mixed use, and they're not likely to do it.
Yes and no. The no side of that answer would be that there are properties on the west side that one property has got both LDR and the RES designations within that property. So one is 12 units to the acre, the other's 3. We've encouraged those owners to take the aggregate density of that. And instead of doing all townhouses here and all of that there, to mix it up and do something creative and be flexible and think outside the box. So there are a few cases, opportunities for that without increasing densities, just because certain properties have got those advantages of 2 different designations on them.
When we were working through that, the amendment to that intent statement and working on these diagrams and so forth, we had a body of citizens we'd kind of been working through these ideas with. And there are some, I think Bill kind of alluded to it, there are some things we could probably talk offline about. There's some flexibilities kind of built in, particularly into that map I alluded to, that might give us some ability to work with, you know, a proposed development that might be a little more dense than just what you'd see at face value. So that might allow some type of townhome situation like you see in this that graph there or diagram. So the other thing too is back on this page, we do talk about, again, these are policies we're talking about in D here. We start referencing the need to come up with some incentives to bring some of this about. And so one of the things we had talked about as staff is going back in and trying to come up with some code solutions to come up with some incentives to bring about, you know, incentives for, you know, water-wise landscaping. Landscaping, I think, is one of those things that's referenced. Oh, pushed the wrong button again. Water-wise landscaping is one of the
why
things
this
they
document had this trouble on my computer, but every time I tried to zoom in to read it more carefully because it was so tiny, it would blur. So it was like
right.
kind of hard to actually read this document. So I struggle a little bit with the details.
Right.
And I'm still having trouble reading it, even though it's written. So where are you saying?
Right here, we talk right in this area in subsection D on the right-hand side, green space is encouraged.
I mean, would my solution be my question be resolved as simply by saying something like, on E, where it says developers may decide how to integrate the different lot sizes within their plans, and this may include, if approved by staff, some mix of housing types.
Yeah, that
I don't know. I don't want to complicate this, and I don't want to protract this, but if there's a simple phrase in there that would be helpful. I mean, if in the staff's opinion, it's counterproductive to put it in there, I guess I'd like to understand why. And if it's not counterproductive to put something simple in there, I would prefer to.
I think that's doable. I think we can certainly add a
Councillor McKay wants to make a comment.
Sure, go ahead.
We've talked about this at great length, and we already had many discussions about this. And I remember it coming down to us making things more complicated with builders and developers, and we settled on this, the pictures and the language, to make sure there was an ability to do the different and a mix,
Right.
but not specifically didn't want to make things too complicated and scare
Yes,
developers away. And we had this
exactly right.
discussion at great length.
Well, but this goes back to the previous council. There was a document that we approved. I know, but that document has vanished. So or that there's some modest language in here. That's what I want to make a motion, actually, if we could just, but I don't know. We need to have some sort of proposed language, and then like to know.
We could maybe
suggestions, Justin.
No, Chair Hanley, what I'd say is if there's a suggestion of an overall proposed language to give staff direction and then have them bring this back.
That's what I was going to say.
Okay.
May drag the process
For
out a little
tonight.
longer than is preferred, but to give them that general direction and then bring the document back might be preferable in this situation.
Yeah, I don't want to delay this. So if we could bring something back to tonight.
Yeah, we can do that. So again, could you just repeat what you said in a brief sentence about talking with staff about a mix of housing type? Elaborate a little bit more on that, because I don't think I
Yeah,
totally
somewhere in that on E or F where you're
Yep.
talking about lot sizes and acreage,
right.
units per acre. If you can say that there's some conversation that the staff are open to for a mix of housing types as long as it meets other requirements or something to that effect. Sir Whipple?
Yeah, so looking at the top of this page, in B, where it says, detached single-family homes should be the predominant housing type and use of other types should augment and not detract. Could you
like
just
that,
say the use of other types, including townhomes or twin homes or whatever? Or is that enough because that indicates there can be other types in this document already? So does that solve your problem?
Yeah,
Or
maybe it does. I mean, I do remember reading that sentence. I guess use of other types should augment and not detract, and can be negotiated with staff, or I don't know, maybe that's enough. Okay. I don't know. I was just a little surprised at the statistics that we were like, I saw actually two different statistics. One said 75% is, I couldn't tell if it was current or projected, but 75% single family detached. Another one said 90. And I was like, wow, those are really high percentages.
For currently
Somewhere in the document, it was saying that that's where we're at right now in the southwest side, or that's what's projected. I
don't think
I mean, if we had the LDR stuff built out, it wouldn't be that, right? I mean,
Right.
so it must be
Definitely
currently.
I'd be surprised if it was 90%, but trying to remember.
All right, I'll drop my request.
Okay. So I don't know that we have a ton of time left on this, do we?
We don't, but we have tonight. So is there, or are we not coming? We're coming back to this. Tonight,
Yeah,
right?
we are coming back. We had talked about existing characteristics.
Actually, we have 5 minutes. So
you got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So we had got to future land use. To me, this is the piece of the document that I tend to work with the most. I know that when people come in and developers, property owners, we're going to be looking at this section, talking about particularly looking at the map, but this section kind of gives us, really describes what you're seeing on this map. So it kind of helps to define these land use designations. I guess going back one more page still. It helps I think it's helpful that res land use designation's always been kind of a problem, and now we've in trying to define that, I think there was some uncertainty with the map, and so now we've got some text to kind of clear that land use designation up, and so I think this document, this particular section, is going to be helpful in giving some color to what we've had on the map for the last couple of years. So again, it's I guess one of the other sections I'd point to as well is this parks, trails, and open space. Most of this, most of the parks that are planned for this area, I guess, are kind of in place, but there are some areas that do get highlighted in this plan. Like there's the big Dry Creek area. We talk about the desire to have a trail system through this area here, and also the Lakewood Park. We already have a park there, but expanding that would be helpful and give access to property owners kind of more in the southerly part of that area. And so I feel like again, this is going to be super helpful in working with the public. So I am going to, if I could, there we go. Going back, the next section is dealing with the urban realm. Talk a little bit about art and street corridors. One of the things that we've talked a lot about with staff is the Lakeview Parkway. You've got it's a parkway, and it has a landscape strip in the middle, and we feel like that area could be utilized. We talk a little bit about that, about art and landscaping could enhance that parkway. Public Works wanted us to add this road profile up here on for the Lakeview Parkway. Shows a landscape median. So we feel like that could be a big addition to that area. I think the plan notes that we've only half of the roadway's been built, and as we continue to expand that to maybe look at some art and landscaping. There's some additional road profiles that Public Works asked for. This one kind of surprised me a little bit. Historic preservation. I don't think a lot about historic preservation other than the Fort Utah area, but apparently there is some areas out there that we need to be looking out for as far as road for historic preservation. And so we added a small section on historic preservation here at the end. Helpful thing here. Obviously we want to, we need to have an implementation plan, and this plan or this strategy guide here calls for us to have regular reviews to seeing how the goals are being implemented, and also to gives us an implementation schedule for keeping us on track. It gives us a timeline for when things are supposed to be done, helps us to keep things in a sequential order, and also ends with making sure this document's available to the public for review. So that's kind of just really kind of a brief summary of the document, and here to answer any questions you have before we come back tonight.
Any questions? Thanks, Brandon.
Okay, thank you.
Back tonight. Okay, we have item number 3 is an ordinance amending the zone map classification of approximately 0.21 acres of real property generally located at 515 South 700 East from residential conservation to low density residential. It looks like Bill Pepperoni is presenting this item.
It's okay. Thank you. So this is the subject property, members of the council. This is 700 East along the west side of the property and 500 South along the north side of the property. The home that you see there on the illustration has been demolished at this point, and actually a building permit has been issued for construction that's going on right now. There's a lot of history on this piece of property, and the property owner and I would be happy to go into some of that history in this evening's meeting if you'd like. But in order to make this kind of as simple and direct as I can, I'll be very brief. A building permit's been issued on this piece of property for a single family home and a detached accessory dwelling unit because it's in the RC zone. From the beginning, the property owner has really desired 2 single-family detached homes for children. So the LDR rezone would allow that to take place, would allow that change. So if this is turned down, it's going to be 2 dwelling units, a single-family home and an ADU. If this is approved, that'll be 2 single-family homes. The Planning Commission was comfortable recommending approval on this and recommending that unanimously for a couple of reasons. Number one, this entire block of 7th East over to State Street, which is over here, and from 7th South, 5th South to 6th South, this entire block is in the neighborhood master plan as multifamily residential. So this is less dense than what the neighborhood plan would call for. As you can see from the map, that's MDR zoning to the north. That's MDR zoning to the west. If this is approved, it'll be 2 4,000 square foot lots or a little bit bigger than that and 2 single family homes. There was no neighborhood opposition. The neighbor to the west did come out to the east, did come out to the meeting. There is a property line dispute going on between the two right now that is in court and is about to be settled. I think the property owners, it's my understanding, the property owners have reached agreement on where that new property line will be, but he spoke in favor of this rezoning. If the rezoning is approved, staff is going to hold back on finalizing that rezoning until we are sure that the boundary line dispute has been resolved so that we know exactly what we're rezoning and so that we can make sure that we have 2 lots that are at least 4,000 square feet because that's the minimum permitted in the LDR zone. That's all I have.
Counselor McKay.
So does that mean, since I assume ADUs are legal, then both homes will be able to have an ADU?
In the LDR zone, you can have ADUs, yes, but the site is very tight and I don't see any way for them to provide parking for those other units. So I don't expect there'll be ADUs in the future. I don't think they'll be able to meet the parking requirement.
And the intent of the home builder is to sell the lots then to his children, so 2 homes to his kids? Is that?
I think she is giving them to her children to help them get a start in life. At least that's what she represented at the Planning Commission meeting. Yeah.
Other questions?
Thank you.
All right, item number 4, an ordinance amending Provo City Code to update references to local development standards. This will be presented by David Day, city engineer.
Thank you. Some of you have probably seen this before, others haven't, so it might be a little confusing. I'm going to try to be as clear as possible. Each year, as we look at all of our public works development standards and standard drawings, we try to update them to make them more clear. We take suggestions from the public, developers, engineers, our own staff, and we try to fine tune those each year. So the ordinance that you're looking at right here is there's 2 numbers that change 2022 to 2023. But those 2 documents, the 2023 public or Provo standard drawings and the Provo standard public works development design standards, had 26 pages of changes. So let me get to the next page. Oh, sorry. Go back. So just to put it in perspective, these are all the documents that are part of this whole ordinance, but we're only changing 2 of the documents. So out of all of these documents, there's about 5,000 pages of information here. Out of those 5,000 pages, we're changing about 26 of them. In our public works standard drawing details, 15 pages were edited to clarify things. 6 of those pages were removed. In our development design standards, 5 of those pages were edited. So if you want me to show you all of those, I can. If you don't want to see those, I can just ask for questions at this time.
I think we're grateful it wasn't 5,000 pages.
Yeah, 5,000, man, we'd be here for a while.
You have all of those pages memorized though, right?
I don't, but I know how to use like search engines and index and table of
library.
contents
Yeah.
really well.
Counselor Whipple?
I just have a question about this generally. So for like the MUTCD, could we do our own design standard that would allow for us to do like incredible art and crosswalks or something like that? This is not what you've done, but is this the kind of thing where we are taking the standards that have our national standards that have adopted by the state and making specific ones for Provo?
Yes.
And if we do that, then when state entities like UDOT or something comes through, then we can say, yeah, we understand you've got the MUTCD, but here we also have this little requirement for you.
Yeah. As long as it complies with those overarching standards, we can do specialized things that may not be contained in their documents, but comply with all the safety requirements.
So the changes that you have made in these documents here are similar to the example I gave, but they're specific to answer questions that we've seen coming to our department.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, let me just, if I can open that, first one right there. See if it'll open. We tried it earlier today and it worked, right? Is it? Oh, is it? Oh, it opened in another screen. Yeah. Okay. So cool. So this is one of the pages that got edited, and the red is the change, and the blue is the new text. The red is being removed. The blue is being added. Go to the next page, and you can kind of see how exciting these get. This is a sewer manhole, and we're getting rid of the 4-foot diameter, and it has to be 5 to 6 foot diameter. Part of that reason for that is occasionally we have to get people down in that manhole, and we have to comply with confined space requirements. So 4 foot is just too tight. So, and so on and so forth. I can go through more of them if you like, but this is the kind of things. I mean, we don't really have crosswalks. Can you go down about almost to the end, I think? Well, no, maybe 2 more pages. We did the sight distance drawing. I think it's one more right there. So this is one we modified that's a little more exciting. It's identifying trees, because sometimes when trees get too close to the corner, they make it so people can't see pedestrians. And so we wanted to make that clear on this drawing here. So
Councilor McKay has a question.
I read through this document and something just interested me that I wondered about lately, because in my neighborhood, we're building a bunch of new developments. And I see that the developer puts a whole sidewalk in, and then they all get ruined. And that has to be put in a landfill, and the landowner has to get rid of it and build a new sidewalk. So I saw that you have a clause in there that the developers have to build the sidewalk, and they have to put a bond with the city. They don't get the bond back until the sidewalk is done. So that made me understand why I see these sidewalks go in and then get trashed. But I was just curious about that. Like, I was wondering, it just seems so inefficient to always be doing sidewalks twice, and the waste and the money.
yeah,
And it was literally probably 80% of the sidewalks, and both the 2 developments next to me had to be redone. That's a lot of concrete.
yeah. So occasionally we can talk a developer in. So what's happening there is standard sidewalk is 4 inches thick. And when we drive over it, we make them go 6 inches thick. So when they put the driveway in, they have to tear that out if it was only put in at 4 inches.
A lot of the tear outs are just because of construction. You know, they have vehicles going over.
People
and they
driving
just get,
over them. Yeah. So for a development, they have to put the sidewalks in. And then when they build the houses, you're right, they do destroy a lot of it. We've tried to think through that to see what the right thing to do is, because there is waste. And we've tried to get developers to put in 6-inch sidewalk because then it wouldn't have to be removed unless it got broke. A lot of them are like, no, it's too expensive. Other ideas have been, hey, if a certain amount of the homes get built, we have to complete the sidewalk because now where do people walk that move in? And it's that transitioning from a buildable lot to homes being built, and where do the people who move in walk while they're building the new house? And so far, we've just required sidewalks to be put in when the development's approved, and knowing that there's going to be a lot of sidewalk broke.
On this image that's in front of us, you're changing the name of the one thing from back of walk to property line. My understanding was that property line was usually like about a foot in from the back of the walk. Does that matter for this?
Yeah, so for about 20 years, our back of walk was not the property line. For 20 years, it was the front of walk. And so the back of walk was switching locations. So does the property line, but the property line is a little more clear location where we can identify where site distance can be measured from. For us, I guess, maybe not for the average person.
Okay, any other questions?
Okay, I shouldn't have stopped on that one. Too many questions on it. So, all right. Is there anything you'd like me to show more tonight of what we've seen so far?
Sounds like
those other two documents are the full documents, and the one is about 44 pages. The other one's about 110. So it'd take a while to get through all of them.
no, I don't think that'll be necessary. I mean, they were in our packet. So, I think we stay at a high level on it.
Okay.
Unless somebody has a specific question, but it doesn't sound like it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll come back at 2:55.
Recording stopped.
Now with item number 5, which is a discussion regarding a proposed appropriation for an information systems department external assessment. John Borget, Director of Administrative Services, will be presenting. It says David Elgus, but
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you,
Okay.
Chair Handley and the council. If you'll remember in the spring of last year when we were heavily working on the budget, the council had a number of really good discussions about IT. As we all know, it touches everything we do, and it seems like the demands for IT resources just grow exponentially. And there was concerns about whether we should add staff. There was a number of different discussions. And in follow up to those discussions and also some discussions administrations had, we're recommending that the city engage a third party resource to perform an IT assessment. There's a number of ways to address the challenges with IT, and one is just to throw people at it, which is a lot of times what needs to happen. But we wanted to have, and the council and some of the discussions they've had, wanted to go just a little deeper into that and kind of do an assessment before and see where we want to go. Some of the things that we are recommending that this assessment look at is the strategy, our budget, our staffing levels, our reporting structure, and general practices with the goal to better align budget and expected outcomes and acceptable risk levels. We feel the study can be completed for approximately $30,000 and propose the half of the cost of the study come from an appropriation of general fund balance, and the other half come from the information systems operating budget. As we started reviewing this process, we contacted a number of vendors and got some responses. And we actually met with 3 vendors and went through they presented their proposals to us. And as a result, we're recommending a group, the Hartman Executive Advisors Group. I want to let you know why we're recommending this company. First of all, they have in-depth experience with the public sector, and they've worked with organizations very similar to Provo and larger to Provo, and we were impressed with that. We were also impressed with the expertise of their staff. And another thing that we were really excited about was that their willingness and desire to do an on-site assessment where they actually come on site. They meet with administration. They meet with each of the department directors. We're recommending they also meet with the council executive director and come in and really find out directly kind of what's happening, where's the city at, what are some of the concerns, and how can provide a good proposal. The other thing that we liked was just their overall approach to the assessment and the things that they were included. We've worked closely with Cindy Atkinson. She's the VP of Relation Development, and she's actually on the Zoom call as well, and David Edges, who's the Director of Government Services Practices. And so at this time, David will be joining us on Zoom, and he's going to walk through the proposal. And then after or during his proposal, you're welcome to ask him any questions. And then I'm happy to field questions after the presentation too, if there are any more for me. So with that, David, I believe, are you available to walk through the discussion?
I am available, John. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, I think so.
Perfect. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, council members. I just wanted to quickly take this opportunity to say thank you to the Provo Municipal Council for the time this afternoon to present Hartman's proposed statement of work for the requested IT assessment. My name is David Eldris, and I'm leading Hartman's state and local government practice. I'm joined today by a few members of the team, as John mentioned, Cindy Atkinson and Jeff Gredline and others. So for any of the questions that come up, we can definitely each of the questions that the council has. So with that, I'd like to move into the proposal itself. If you go perfect, thank you so much. So Hartman Executive Advisors was founded in 2004 as an advisory firm and is an independent technology leadership and advisory firm that works with local government leaders to align IT solutions with state and citywide goals and strategies. Hartman does not sell or profit from any technology solutions. So our clients know that our recommendations that they receive are truly in their best interest. If you could go to the next page, please. So as the city of Provo evolves and plans for the future, leadership looks to ensure that operational technologies are aligned to meet critical operational and constituent needs in an efficient, scalable, and secure manner. The city of Provo desires to conduct an independent IT strategy assessment designed to evaluate current technologies and its ability to meet IT security and IT operational demands of the organization now and in the future. In order to accomplish the city's objectives, Hartman is proposing to conduct a strategic IT assessment designed to give leadership a comprehensive snapshot of IT effectiveness, including elevating the gaps between current capabilities and those capabilities required to accomplish the city's strategic goals, and a plan of action and recommendation to make changes and or improvement. The areas that if you could go to the next page, please. The areas of focus that Hartman will focus on, but not limited to, are these core 6 areas. The first is the IT strategy review, and it's really to look at current initiatives and technologies in order to get specific feedback and understand the current and future positioning of IT, and really look at best practices and methodologies. Hartman, as John mentioned, Hartman has factored in about 24 reviews into the scope of work. I wanted to give a little extra review time for some of the business leaders. So across leadership, the city council, and in application and functional leadership, we really want to get a real comprehensive snapshot of where IT currently is now. And that's really the start of the assessment, is really those interviews, really getting a lay of the land of where IT is positioned now to really focus on the strategic direction of the city of Provo. The next would be application review, looking strategically at current software systems and significant business and technology successes and frustrations experienced by the city of Provo. That would be followed up by an infrastructure review, looking at current infrastructure from network to telephony to cloud to security and remote connectivity, as that is, since the time of COVID, that seems to be playing a part now and in the future of how we are doing the future of work. Then we're going to really look at the process, really looking at the processes that really are focused on how technology is delivering its final product to the city, to the various departments, looking at things around product delivery, demand management, operational management, and really getting a sense of where that current state is now. And then the relationship to those vendors and partners that are instrumental in helping IT really deliver on the solutions that they are focused on delivering for the city of Provo. And last but certainly not least is really security, and really kind of wrapping everything up and really understanding how things are being done in a secure environment, and keeping the environment in the city of Provo secure so that you can continue to deliver on the constituents and the residents' needs and demands from the city of Provo. We'll look at risk and governance and compliance. So these are the 6 components that we will, on the foundation level, really focus on. Really, our methodology is to focus on a 60-day assessment, to focus on high-level gaps in where the current IT organization exists today. And then focus on a midpoint check-in to see if we are still in line with the engagement and the client expectations. And then we'll formalize a final presentation really aligned, and we're giving a verbal report, a verbal presentation, and a written report to senior management on our findings and our recommendations. So there are three core main core deliverables in this statement of work from the kickoff meeting, and that will then turn into the first round interviews across the city of Provo, across from the council, from leadership, from business application owners, to the interim executive briefing meeting, which is midway through the engagement, and then we will wrap it up with the final final presentations, finding, and recommendations. So that is really the goal of the goal of the 60-day IT assessment, is to really look at people, processes, and technology, looking at capabilities and capacities, really aligned to make sure that IT is positioned to give great service and great outcomes for all of the business application owners and all the functional leadership that is in the city of Provo. And I would be happy to take any questions. So I will open up the floor at that point.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
One other thing I wanted to mention that I think is really important for the council to be aware of is that our goal would be that we would come back in the December council meeting on the action agenda to approve the appropriation, and that this study would start in the middle of December and end in the middle of February, because our goal is to be able to take the output from this study and utilize it in preparing the budget for 2024.
That was my main question, was what the timing was on this.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Okay. Councilor Whipple, Councilor McKay.
So on that timing question, it says a 60-day review, but is that adjusted for holiday schedules or anything like that?
We were aware that that Christmas is going to be part of this process, but as we've had discussions with the Hartman Group, there's a sense and feeling that they still feel like we're going to work with them to make sure that we can accomplish in 60 days. I think this is just for us. Our goal would be the middle of February, but I think if we can be done by the end of February, that gives us adequate time for the budget. But that's the focus and the goal. And we don't want to do anything that's going to take away or make the study not as in depth, but we'll do everything we can on our side to make sure. And I think that's the goal on both parties. So yes, good question though. Real good question.
I'm just wondering if this is, so did IT decide that this is the company they want to go with, or how was the vetting process done in that regard?
It's a great question. And Josh is here. He's here just kind of because he will be impacted by this, but there we have what's called an IS policy group, information system policy group. And that group is really focused on being kind of a guiding group that can kind of recommend practices and things that go on. Both Wayne and myself sit on that group, as well as Travis Ball and Chief Miguel and Dave Decker and Amanda Erkenbrack. And they're the ones that have kind of selected and went through the process of coming up and selecting Hartman. It has not been an IT decision. Josh did provide us some guidance, some help on companies to choose from, but the actual selection and this actual process is they'll be asked questions and they're going to be the one that's going to have to respond to those, but they're not the ones that's driving it.
Okay, I think that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and our recommendation would be, if council's supportive, to move it to the action agenda in December.
Okay, we'll look for that. We'll plan on putting that on the agenda. All right, we'll move on to item number 6, an ordinance amending the previously adopted ordinance 2022-23 regarding the neighborhood program. Justin Harrison, Executive Director.
Good afternoon, council. Hopefully this will be fairly quick and straightforward. As you all know, August 9th, 2022, a few months back, the council adopted changes to the previous neighborhood program and created the neighborhood district program after about a year and a half of meetings by the neighborhood program review committee. The changes that staff is bringing you today and later this evening for hopefully your approval really just include some cleanup language that didn't make it into the ordinance that was adopted on August 9th. So on the screen, you'll see the ordinance. And if we can scroll to the first change, there are 3 changes in total. The first change is in it's line 169. It's in 0404B2. And this speaks directly to the executive board and the terms of office. It was discussed by the neighborhood program review committee to make this change to 12 months as opposed to 24 months, that a executive board chair would have to wait before surveying again. This was a discussion that had happened prior to the adoption of the ordinance back in August, but didn't make it into that final language. So the neighborhood program review committee had proposed bringing it to this work meeting for discussion to see if there was any additional questions with this particular change. But it is my understanding that that was discussed and approved and by that review committee prior to the first adoption of this ordinance. So I can go through all 3 of the changes, or if there are any questions specifically on the change from 24 to 12 months, I can take those now. Nothing. All righty. The second change is in section 050 sub 4. It's line 207. And this speaks specifically to references to the Open and Public Meetings Act in Utah Code. So the consensus from the Neighborhood Program Review Committee was that the intent was for these meetings to be noticed on the city website, not to actually follow exactly what is spelled out in OPMA. By diving a little deeper into this, as staff was reviewing the approved ordinance, the new neighborhood district programs actually don't fall under Title 52, Chapter 4, because they are not a legislative body. They don't have the authority to actually make legislative changes and vote in that sense. So the intent is for these meetings to be noticed on the city website, for these procedures to be adopted in the neighborhood program handbook and made public for residents to see and read, and of course communicated in any way possible so that there's the most participation that can be had by residents. However, the thought was having this this reference to OPMA in the code needed to be changed to clarify that this will be done through procedures in the handbook. Any questions here?
Mr. Whipple?
So are we going to follow kind of a schedule for posting these? How much time before a meeting it will be posted and things like that?
Yes. So the idea being that now that meetings will be regularly scheduled, that their agendas will also be posted regularly beforehand, at least 24 hours beforehand on the city website, in addition to pushing them out through various, whether that be email, social media, so that people have the ability to see what's on the agenda, in addition to filing or posting those minutes that are taken at each of the meetings on the website. Go ahead.
Yeah. So does this set out that 24-hour time frame for notice? Does it set out a time for them to get the minutes up after the meeting?
So it's not specifically in the ordinance that would be adopted through procedures that would go into the handbook. Any other questions? All right. And the last change is line 279. This is actually just a typo. Changing section 060 sub 5 from it to if the grant is approved. So those
Can
are
you explain that change? No, I'm just kidding. I don't understand. Okay.
All right.
Pretty
Any other
straightforward.
questions?
Doesn't look like it.
All righty.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Okay, we'll move on then to item number 7. It's our last item for the work session. Malia Daly will present an ordinance amending Provo City Code regarding towing operations to clarify signage requirements and allowed fees. Ryan Jones is presenting. Because he loves this topic. So
Malia is pointing at me, so I I guess this is mine. Malia, can you scroll down to the exhibit text? So as you'll recall, we had a meeting about this a few weeks ago, and we made some changes accordingly. So here in subsection 5, deleted all of the signage requirements specific to city code and just incorporated a reference to state code, as we discussed in the last meeting. If you can scroll down a little bit further. Oops. So right here, I made some clarifications about the fees. Separated out because the language was a little bit awkward. So I separated booting fees from towing fees. So the new or amended sub 6, Roman 6 says maximum, and this, again, we're talking about patrol boots and tows here. So maximum for a boot is 80% of the maximum fee allowed under state code. And then under 7, I tried to make some clarifications here too. I realized there was a little bit of a loophole where previously it said 80% of the total of all of these fees, and not all of the fees are always applicable. So if you even if you didn't charge some of them, you could theoretically still charge 80% of the total. So I've changed it. So now you can only charge 80% of each one of them and have listed all of the fees that are permissible. One difference from our previous conversation about this is I did verify that state code has been amended in the last couple of years and that an after hours fee has been added to state code. So I put that in here. So if you think back to our previous discussion, and I don't remember now off the top of my head the numbers that we used, but the total that could be charged is actually $75 greater than the slides that we talked about last time, because that's the maximum after hours fee, which would be $60 here because it's limited to the 80%. And let's see if you can scroll down a little bit more. Let's see, can you go back up? Sorry. Oh, and then the new sub 8 just says you can't charge any fees other than those that are explicitly listed there. 9. Let's see, I'm trying to remember. This, I think, more than anything was, oh, I know what happened here. So in 9C, I was trying to take out a reference to the administrative code that was actually inaccurate. And while I was doing that, I tweaked some of the language up in the main paragraph of 9, just so it wasn't, in my mind, confusing. So again, the intent here of the new 9 is just to say that you can't charge any fees that aren't allowed by state code. You can't charge extra ones and kind of make ones up. So, and then if you can scroll down, I think that's the end of it. So those were the things that that we talked about in the last session that I felt like there was clear consensus. Those were kind of the recommendations that I made for code cleanup on towing that everybody seemed on board with. So I went ahead and presented those, and those are on the agenda, or prepared those, I should say, and those are on the agenda for tonight's council meeting. In talking with leadership, though, the real reason why we put this on for work session was to talk and for the council to have a discussion about whether there are other towing changes that we also want to make. There was presentation made last time by Mark and myself about, but principally Mark, about delivery vehicles, and we talked about grace periods and what they've done in some other cities. As I started working on this, and hopefully it was not a fault of my memory or my notes, but I did not remember there being a consensus on action to be taken in those areas. So talking that over with leadership, we decided to bring it back to this work session for council discussion and direction from the council if there are other changes besides these cleanups that the council want to undertake with regard to towing.
Counselor Whipple.
I just have a quick question on 9C where it says if it's towed or booted unlawfully, no fee shall be payable. So we'd had an email a while ago where somebody had been cited or charged or something for parking in a handicap spot, but it wasn't a legal handicap spot. So it was an illegal towing or whatever, but they still had to pay in order to get their vehicle back.
Well, they shouldn't have to, and this would give them, I guess two things could happen is if they wanted to report that to the police and the police investigated, we could potentially cite criminally for a violation of this, the tow company. It also, the intent here is that this should create a private right of action for them to take the tow company to small claims court to get their money back. Alternatively, if we did actually accept the criminal case, we might be able to get a restitution order for that. So, I don't know that I can't remember if I was copied on that thread or anything, but I guess the next step for that person, if they felt like there had been a violation of city code, would be to report that to the police for investigation.
Okay. I just wanted to check on that because if somebody's in the situation, they're going to have to pay something to get their vehicle. And so I wanted to know what their recourse was based on this language.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Travis.
Thanks for making those changes, Brian. Mr. Jones, looks like those are good positive changes. I am supportive of us pursuing something regarding delivery vehicles. This conversation started because of pizza delivery vehicles getting booted or whatever. So I'll just say I'm supportive of us pursuing something, trying to put something together that makes sense, if possible. But if I'm the only one, that's fine. I just wanted to express that I'm supportive of us taking a look at that, a harder look at that.
I'm definitely interested.
Me too.
Sounds like there's unanimous interest in pursuing some language about grace periods.
Okay.
And it would definitely need to be minimal because it will be taken advantage of, right? There's like that balance of.
So then I guess the question is, what's the next step? Do you want staff to kind of take a crack at that and just come back with some proposals? I mean, there's different ways to do it. We talked in the last, are we talking about, I guess I just have a bunch of unanswered questions. Are we talking about only for delivery vehicles? And if we are, do they have to be marked as delivery vehicles because this whole DoorDash thing came up and stuff? And
yeah, I'll speak to that. I think we've heard enough cases of people not being given a reasonable amount of time in any case that I would rather it be not just for delivery vehicles. I would rather just sort of say there's maybe it's a 15-minute window or something like that we just avoid the possibility of, the sort of predatory towing where somebody's following around and somebody's just dropping something off and they're coming out with a boot. Okay.
So what we want to look at is a standard grace period for all patrolled lots.
That's what I would prefer.
Okay. It's probably pretty easy to do in concept. There's a provision in the code that you may remember that part of the patrol towing requirements in Provo that you have to, by means of photographic or video evidence, document the violation. And you're supposed to, even currently under the code, you're supposed to do the documentation before you connect the vehicle. So I think we could easily add something in that says, and then wait 10 minutes and then wait 15 minutes. And so that's probably fairly easy. I don't know, one of the other questions I had was, does it matter where they're parked? I mean, it's one thing if and I don't know how many lots in Provo have assigned parking, but I know that I've lived in places before where, I had a spot that was my spot. And it seems kind of frustrating that anybody, even delivery people, should be parking in that spot and then have to wait to get it towed. But that makes it much more complicated to try to draft around if we want to distinguish between different types of spots.
I think that's relevant though in assigned spots and in handicap spots, right? Because otherwise they'll always pick the handicap spot. So they need to do guest park, some other parking then.
Okay, but presumably those would be marked or.
Right, like I'm thinking.
Could we say in any parking spot unless otherwise marked as reserved handicap parking seems like we don't even have the authority, right, to give someone a grace period there.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Is that kind of the general consensus? Okay, I'll try to think about how to do that. The handicap part is probably easy. The other part but at least my experience that I've had with that were, in those cases, usually you've got numbered stalls, right? And it's the numbered stalls that that even the delivery people shouldn't be parking in, but we'll take a crack at it.
Yeah, I would say that was not my intent, was that somebody with an assigned spot gets taken it, but like a guest spot, right, or, a curb spot or something like that.
Okay.
That was my intent in bringing that up.
Okay.
I think I concur on that.
Yeah, like even illegal streets, is that like allowed? Like if it's a DoorDash and there is no parking in that area and they park illegally for 10 minutes, is that
You're
okay?
saying like a red curb or
Uh-huh,
something. Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't want that taken advantage of, I don't think.
Right. Okay.
They're doing that. That's their own risk, right?
Okay.
So is this something we'll be looking at tonight? Is this something you can put together that quickly, or is this just something we can put off for 2 weeks? We want you to have an enjoyable dinner.
That's a good question. I can take a stab at it and see what I can get done.
I mean, is this on our agenda tonight?
The changes that we went through already
Well,
are on the agenda.
If you can't, I mean, we can approve these changes tonight and then we
Right,
can
and come back
look at
with
an
an
amendment
amendment.
later. Whatever works for you. I don't think there's any rush.
Okay. We'll work on that then. Anything else? Was there I couldn't remember if there were any other lingering of the moment towing issues besides that one.
Looks like no.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian. Or Mr. Jones. When we're like in a smaller room and work session, I feel like, first name is going to feel a little more natural. For some reason, I'm on the dais. I feel like everyone's Mr. Council member. All right. Closed session has been requested. Do you want to explain that, Mr. Jones?
Yes, I'd be happy to. There are actually a couple of 2 or 3 different items that have been raised for discussion. They all have to do with either reasonably imminent litigation or character and competence of individuals, which are permitted reasons under the statute for a closed meeting. So it'd be appropriate for.
Before I look for that motion, I do want to ask about timing. It's 3:30 right now, so we're a full 30 minutes ahead of schedule. Should we assume that closed meeting will begin at 4 as it was scheduled? Or does it matter? Nobody's coming.
I don't think we were planning on bringing anybody to it.
Okay.
Gary Millward was going to join by video, but I think he's watching at the moment. So in fact, it's probably better for him that it's earlier. So I think as far as I know, I think it's fine to just go straight into.
Okay. All right. I'll look for a motion then.
So moved.
Counselor Whipple. Do I have a second?
Second.
Counselor Hoban seconds. I'll call for a vote. I will vote yes. Counselor McKay.
Yes.
Counselor Whipple.
Yes.
Counselor, let's see, did Ellsworth ever join us? I don't think she's able to. Counselor Shipley.
Yes.
Counselor Hoban.
Yes.
Okay, and Counselor Fillmore is excused, so that's 5 in favor. Counselor Fillmore and Ellsworth excused. We'll return at 5:30.
Recording stopped.